So today, I had a little trouble figuring out exactly how to title today's talk. I finally came up with how the creation is like a jelly donut. No reaction at all, just like, what?
I can hear the word.
Okay. How the creation is like a jelly donut. I know donuts are not as well known in India, so this is going to take some explanation, but let's hope that it's instructive and entertaining at the same time. Maybe I should first explain exactly what a jelly donut is. Okay, so donuts are round, and they're kind of a cakey material, and you deep fry it. But most donuts, they have a hole in the middle, okay? So you can't put anything there. But if you make a donut that has no hole in the middle, then after you make the outer part, you can poke a hole into the middle and you can squirt in various fillings. Jelly is common. Lemon or raspberry or cherry. And then of course sometimes they make donuts with cream-filled custard. In India I've seen them with like whipped cream. But in America a custard, a firm custard is really okay. And of course it's entertaining. It's a donut. It tastes good. And it's not good for you. And that's pretty much the creation. It tastes good, but it's not good for you. So, but the thing about making donuts is that there's a lot that goes into it before you can make the donut. First you have to have the idea, well, I want to make a donut. But then you have to do all of the things that allow you to make the donut. You have to have the grow the grain to make the flour. You have to bring the water in somehow. You have to create the space in which you create the donut. So you have to design a building and a kitchen, and you have to have all the utensils, and you have to have electricity, and you have to have lights. You have to have pots, and you have to have this oil and all kinds of stuff that you don't really think about in order to create a jelly donut. And then of course, once you start creating jelly donuts, it's like you can't eat just one. You're like, oh, I love jelly donuts, and you really like them. And then if you don't have your jelly donut, you feel bad. You got to have your jelly donut. So this is, in its own way, how the creation works. The creation came from seemingly nowhere. In other words, imagine no creation. There's nothing in the sky. There's no earth. We don't have we're not here. Okay, well, we still try to imagine it. Okay, what would there be? What would there be if there was no creation? Yeah. Okay, well, what we say is that there would only be God. What is God? God in that form is unmanifested. In other words, there's nothing, no creation. Satchidananda, bliss. Infinite bliss. But God isn't thinking he's happy. He's just happy. He's just blissful. He's not thinking, oh, I'm really blissful today. And he asks himself, how do you feel today? Well, I feel blissful. No. It's just bliss. And it's infinite. There's no end to it. And there's no beginning. And it's just infinite. Okay, so God's not thinking. But God could think if God wanted to. There is a potential. There is an infinite potential. But it's not doing anything, it's just being blissful, it's being. But at some point, and of course people have various explanations for why did God decide to stop just being and start doing. And the doing is the creation. Now, that could be a story unto itself, and I probably wouldn't use the jelly donut for that. We'd think of something else. Because God is creative. There's always some new way to look at this thing. But the creation is, we call it God's Leela, God's play. But that creation comes out of infinite bliss. And we as individuals, and this is really my subject today, we as individualized spirit, see, God is all souls, infinite spirit, one. But when God becomes individualized, like a wave on the ocean, then it becomes a soul. And that soul, in its purest form, is spirit, infinite spirit. Even though it's individualized, in its purest form, it is just being bliss. And then you could say, well, is it really individualized since it's one with the whole? It's a potential. And they say that once a soul is merged back into the infinite, it can still become reanimated as that individualized expression anytime. It's never forgotten. So that potential is always there, but it's not always manifest. Now, when that individualized soul goes out into the creation, then it gets involved in the jelly donut. Because first, you have to understand the creation starts as an idea. It starts as the thoughts of God, the dream of God. And they say that when you sleep very deeply, when you go into what they call that alpha state, if you have a dream which is connected to what we describe as superconsciousness rather than subconsciousness, you can experience some of that bridge, that initial outpouring of spirit into the creation, which is only thought. It's only ideas. It's only, it's like if you imagine a whole story, but you don't write it down, you don't speak it. You don't visualize it in any way. You just think it. Well, the infinite spirit, which is unmanifest, includes all potential thinking. And remember, that spirit is ever new. So whatever potential the universe has to express itself is always new. There's always a new way to say it, a new way. Same principles, same potentials, but ever expressed in new ways. I'm sure if we traveled around the world, we'd see that jelly donuts can be made in a variety of ways. And you know, in India, you find pizza. Pizza's become quite popular in India. But Indian pizza, generally speaking, is not like American pizza. It's adjusted for Indian tastes. So you do things here in India that are different than what we do, but it's still pizza. So if we look at each of us as individualized spirit, we have been created as an expression of 35 basic ideas. Basic ways, I'm going to read them in a minute. 35 basic concepts, expressions of thought that are the construct of what is described as the causal body. And the causal body is the first layer or stepping out of unmanifested spirit, that the soul that connects us. So it's actually easier to think of it from the physical body going back towards that, but I started from the omnipresent side, so I'm going to keep going, but it'll come together. So this 35 ideas, these basic thought, this basic thought structure, is the skeleton on which we then hang the further out expressions of the body that we experience, although most of it we're unaware of. Okay, we have three bodies. We have the physical body. We have the causal body, which is on the other end. In the middle, we have the astral body. The astral body is a body of light and energy. So in the causal plane, we only think. But causal beings think big. Causal beings can create universes. Now, when we come into the creation, we go from omnipresent spirit, and we go all the way down into the minerals. And then we gradually expand our consciousness through the various expressions of the material world until we become the human form. And once in the human form, we can begin to consciously try to figure out what's going on and do something about it. Until we get to the human form, it's just pretty much an automatic process. But once we get to the human form, what we find is that we become gradually more aware of, I like this and I don't like that. I have good feelings about this. I have bad feelings about that. And when we understand this reactive process, we understand how to undo the circumstances that we're in. When you grow up through the creation, you've got all these forms that just automatically seek their instinctual desires. But over time, as you grow into the higher animals, even though it's an automatic process, you start thinking more complexly about how to accomplish what you desire. So there's tools, there are animals that use tools. There's a incredible video about a bird at the like a wharf, a pier that goes out over the water. And it was downstairs underneath on this little platform, right up against the surface of the water. And somebody had dropped a piece of bread on this little platform. So the bird took the bread, picked it apart, and then dropped the bread on the water. And then a little fish, a little sardine fish, a little small little fish, came up to eat it. And right as the bird grabbed the fish. Now that's not dumb. There is a process going on there that's quite intelligent. And you know, when probably just 50 years ago, 100 years ago, most people thought that babies were, incapable of perception, not very sensitive, that people had very limited abilities. And yet we've seen that as our world view has grown, there's nothing but a greater awareness of more potential that was there, or that was taking place that we didn't even recognize. And so that the way that we thought about things was just simply wrong. We just couldn't see things that were already there. But at the time, people thought very firmly that this is true. And so the process of self-realization is really a process of escaping those limited views of truth until you gradually experience a greater and greater connection to the infinite truth. And so in the physical realm, we use the tools of the senses, but we have mind, we have intellect, we have ego, we have feeling. And it's the feeling that connects us it's like an anchor. It's like it slows us down. I mean, why don't we immediately experience infinite consciousness once we recognize that it's a potential? Why don't we just go, oh, infinite spirit, I'm infinite spirit, okay, here we go. But for some reason we can't do that. Yoganandaji was asked about this one time, and somebody says, well, if I said I was free, I wouldn't be free, would I? And Master said, well, you answered your own question, because you think you wouldn't. But you actually could, if you could actually fully embrace it. But we can't fully embrace it because we have what should be the worst word in language, desires. Desires are what keep us here. Desires are what keep us more interested in the creation than in infinite bliss. They are truly the anchor that holds us back, our desires. And it's not just our desire for the things that we want, that we like, but it's our desire to avoid the things that we don't like. So we look at life and we go, well, this is good and this is bad. It's good that I'm getting my jelly donut, but it's bad that the jelly donut burned, or it's bad that we ran out of jelly donuts. It's bad that I am not going to get my jelly donut today. It's bad that I got diabetes. I can never eat another jelly donut. It's bad that I'm going to die, because then I'll never get to eat a jelly donut. And just take jelly donuts and exchange them for every other thing in life. Your job, your feelings about your job, your relationships, your children, your community, the world that you live in. All of these things we create desires about, which represent how we feel about them. And those desires keep us connected to the world because they take the mind and they bring it down to this physical sense connection rather than allowing it to soar free in spirit. So we've come from this ideational, we have this ideational body, the thoughts. Actually, thoughts isn't exactly the ability to perceive, perception, the ability to cognize. It doesn't have to be categorized, it can just be, you be infinite potential. That thinking process, though, let me read this because it's fascinating the way that we've been constructed. Okay, I'm going to back up and go to the physical body. We have senses, okay? And we're attached to the body through mind, intellect, ego, and feeling. And the feelings represent our desires. But we all know that we carry these desires beyond just the physical world. We have a body in the body. And this is another way that the jelly donut works. The causal realm is invisible. There is no manifestation, there's no light, there's no energy. There is consciousness, but it's not outwardly manifest. Now, the next stage is the astral realm, where that thought becomes garbed in light and energy, prana, life force. So, in the astral realm is actually larger than the physical creation. Sri Teshwar said it's actually hundreds of times larger. So that the physical creation, which is matter, sits like a little, it's the jelly, in the middle of the donut. He called it a fruit basket. But it's that little blob in the middle, which is surrounded by the astral creation. And you can't see the causal plane, so you don't see it's out there. But you see the cake is the astral realm in which we live when we're not on planet Earth, until we've transcended that. And our journey through the minerals goes all the way back to infinite consciousness. So when we pass from this world, we go to the astral realm. And the astral realm has a variety of levels in it, just like the physical world. Fish are in the water, they're not on the land. The worms are in the earth, they're not in the sky. Man is capable of transcending these limitations. And it's fascinating the ways that we do. People jump out of airplanes so they can fly. You know, and there's an amazing story recently. Well, I recently heard about it. I don't remember when it happened. A woman, a young woman went parachuting, and she jumped out and her chute failed. And she dropped 3,500 feet and survived. You know, well, how is that even possible? But stuff like this happens all the time. Things that we can't explain because the creation as it is cannot be fully explained only by the senses. And in the astral realm, it's interesting, the system of communication is not talking. It's basically telepathy. And it's the process, and what is telepathy? Intuitive connection, intuitive perception. The deeper reality of life is that we feel much more as we become sensitive. We feel much more about life than we actually just perceive about it. In other words, when we look at the senses and say, well, the input that we get, and even if we use the intellect and categorize things, okay, there's a person there. People talk about body language. So I'm going to read this person, I'm going to look at their mannerisms and things like that. But they're not taking into account the qualities of energy that are being expressed through the magnetism of their consciousness. The astral body is a representation of our consciousness. And it's seeable right now if we have the ability to perceive it. And what we would see in an astral body, underneath, it would be the same invisible body that animates the physical body. It's right inside us, although it actually reaches out beyond the skin. It's the energy centers, the chakras, and the spiritual eye. And most importantly, it's the connection between. So usually we talk about the chakras, and we're always talking about awakening the higher chakras. And this is correct, but we perceive ourselves as one being, not as a chakra. And the way that we perceive that one being is the connection between the heart and the spiritual eye. So when you close your eyes and you think perception, initially you're the skin. You're thinking, I'm me inside the skin. And I'm a bundle of bones and muscles and stuff. But gradually, as we deepen our interconnection in meditation, we begin to perceive energy. And if we could see, and occasionally people do see into the astral realm from this side, it's actually easier to see into the physical realm from the astral. Because they use this intuitive perception. So, but this is one of the reasons why understanding this will help us to understand how to escape the limits of physical limitation, is that the heart and the spiritual eye and the increasing energy flow through will, connection to prana, life force, and the concentrated application of will in the direction of your interest. This is why the Hang Sa technique is so essential, and energization, We learn to increase energy and to direct it consciously, but to still the mind so that we're not creating a twister of thoughts, just a wild storm of thoughts, a lot of energy. You meet people energetic but scatter-minded. You have to be able to focus. So in the astral realm, you communicate by focusing your energy in the direction of your communication. One of the ways that you eat in the astral realm, now I'm talking about pleasant astral realms. There are what you would describe as hellish levels of the astral realm and heavenly levels. And then very like high Himalayan levels, which I'll talk about in a minute. And so these lower levels, of course, are very dark, and there's wars, and people live very negative, unsettled environment. But in the medium, and many people pass, when people are still not very awake, consciousness-wise, they actually are unaware of being in the astral realm and can basically sleep until they're reborn into a physical body. But once a person becomes reasonably conscious, they begin to perceive the astral realm for all its beauty. It's incredibly beautiful, much more beautiful than the physical realm that we see, which can be incredibly beautiful still. But the thing is, say in the astral, for all the meat eaters, there's no beef in the astral realm. No more meat. If you want to eat, one of the ways you can eat is you walk up to any tree and communicate with the tree. Tell it what you want. You want a mango, you want an apple, whatever, a fruit. And it will manifest it for you. And Sri Teshwar said that you drink from rainbows of light. It's like you dip into the punch bowl, but the punch bowl is light, and out of it comes a nectar. It's a much more refined expression of our potential. If you want to communicate with someone, you think it in their direction. So, if we think about what we're trying to do in meditation, what we're trying to do is practice our ability to do these things on deeper and deeper levels, to be more and more aware of our inner potential, to draw on the prana, the life force of the creation, and then to direct it with our attention to the point between the eyebrows, and to have the heart open, to be intuitively connected to the wisdom, the love, the understanding that we need to proceed in life. I wanted to read this. This is from the resurrection of Sri Teshwar, just one particular part. Man, as an individualized soul, is essentially causal-bodied. That body is a matrix of 35 ideas required by God as the basic or causal thought forces from which he later formed the subtle astral body of 19 elements and the gross physical body of 16 elements. The 19 elements of the astral body are mental, emotional, and life-tronic. The 19 components are intelligence, ego, feeling, mind, sense consciousness. 5 instruments of knowledge, the subtle counterparts of the senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. 5 instruments of action, the mental correspondence for the executive abilities to procreate, excrete, talk, walk, and exercise manual skill. And 5 instruments of life force, those empowered to perform the crystallizing, assimilating, eliminating, metabolizing, and circulating functions of the body. This subtle astral encasement of 19 elements survives the death of the physical body, which is made of 16 gross metallic and non-metallic elements. So this, these ideas, these elements of the way in which we're manifested are things that we can understand about how life is manifested through these aspects of consciousness. And on those aspects are hung the individualized expressions of spirit that we all represent. In the astral realm, your body, they say that your body generally is the body from which you've just come, most recently, from the physical realm, and that it's aged at about 25 to 30. It's most healthy generally, it's most mature and healthy state. But Sir Teshwar chuckled when he said that, but he kept an older body. The thing about the astral body is that if you want to change it, you just think it different and it appears different. And in the astral realm, you don't think of people by the way they look. You think of them by their vibration. And this is something that we all want to do in this world, is stop thinking about looking at bodies and start thinking about looking at consciousness. And when we do that, we'll recognize that we our bodies are animated by our consciousness, and the bodies of everyone else are the same. And underneath that, we all reflect different facets of the same infinite spirit. When we come to the astral realm, we find that because we've incarnated so many times, we have a lot of friends and loved ones. People who in this world we think, oh, I can't wait to be with my family. They have no idea what they're talking about. They think that this one person is the most dear person for all eternity. This is not even remotely correct. What happens is then you start to meet people that you know already from previous incarnations, and who knows how many mothers and how many brothers and sisters and fathers and uncles that you've had, and you recognize them all through intuitive connection regardless of what they look like on the outside. So you do not need the internet for finding your loved ones. But you don't always come into contact with them all. But when you do, you recognize them. But this feature of the astral world is connected to this thought that we've shared before. But what Buddha said about the reason you should feed others is because everyone is a loved one to you from some incarnation or another. And you begin to recognize that the perceptions of separateness that we experience in the physical realm are not truth. They are our own self-created prison that we live in, and then we say, well, this is just the way it is. It's not. But we have to choose to release ourselves from that prison. And the way that we do this is we understand this is so incredible about the yoga science. This chapter, I really encourage you all to read it. Again, if you haven't read it, or read it for the first time if you haven't read it. But chapter 43 of Autobiography of a Yogi, the resurrection of Sri Teshwar. People say that nobody knows what's on the other side. That is not factually correct. The problem is that, like many newspapers who print things that simply aren't true or are not properly investigated, but because it's been written, people think, well, it must be true. So there are, I don't know how many thousands of books about the astral world and dreams and all kinds of things, and that most of that information, it maybe there's some kernel of truth somewhere in it, but most of it is simply wrong. But now we have a master, an avatar, Yoganandaji, saying that my guru, Sri Teshwar, after his passing, materialized a new physical form and explained how he did it and what he was doing now. Well, you see, Sri Teshwar, after passing, was given a new job. His job was to go to the highest level of sphere in the astral world, Hiranyaloka. And in this high astral world, in order to be worthy of going to this realm, you have to be able to maintain nirvikalpa samadhi, which means you're jivan mukta, you're free. You just haven't resolved all of your residual karma. And in that realm, there are some who have gone onto the causal level, and you can imagine them, because they had some residual karma, they had to come back down to this high astral level. And for them, it was like us, if we were in an astral world, being drawn back into the physical. But imagine that. Imagine that you're consciously aware of the infinite spirit. And you see, if you're in the causal realm, you are God's channel for the creation and destruction of the creation. And I don't know exactly how it works, but you get it, and it's okay, you do a few galaxies over there, and you're in charge of, all this stuff. That's me talking, not Master. But you are the channels through which the creation is, Sri Teshwar describes it as cosmic law. But it's basically the invisible strings behind how everything is organized and keeps going without completely collapsing. So, the astral realm goes from, and the thing is, well, where is the astral world? I think most of us think it must be some distant place, like other planets. But no, we are surrounded by the astral world. We are astral beings. We're causal beings. We're jelly donuts. We have the cake, and the astral body is the jelly, in this case. It's that inner body, and underneath it is the causal body. These elements, as they're manifesting through us, but they're invisible. And our karma is represented in all of the chakras, and we carry this from incarnation to incarnation. And that's why these causal beings, when they come back into even the higher astral level, if you were to see their forms at that time, you saw their energy patterns, they'd be almost clear, almost completely clear, just light. But they would have some residual thing that keeps them connected. If we want to advance ourselves spiritually, we have to recognize this inner reality and grow in our direct perception experience of it. And the thing is that it's right here. We are disconnected from the causal realm. We are disconnected from astral. We think we're just physical, but we are right now infinite spirit. But our part of infinite spirit, the soul, has climbed into the cage of the body, mind, personality, and said, well, I'm going to live in here for a while, and then I'm going to act like there's nothing out there. There's nothing more. And then I'm going to convince myself, well, we are kind of tricked into convincing ourselves because we've been hypnotized by the power of Maya. There is a force that animates the creation, that keeps the creation going, and we have been hypnotized by it. So the things that we do, the sadhana that we practice, the lifestyle that we live, is all designed to reverse this outwardness and connect us to inwardness. And in that process, we regain our awareness of skills that we already have. We have the power to manifest anything that we need. We have the power to be one with infinite spirit. We have the power, the infinite power, the child of the king has the whole kingdom as his playground, his potential. And we are all children of the king, the creator of the jelly donut. And if we want to experience that infinite state, if we want to free ourselves from the gooiness and the stickiness of this consciousness, lemon jelly donuts, they're sweet and sour at the same time. And this is the way life is. It's sweet, but it's sour. But in either case, it's limited. And have you ever wondered why people go on vacations, but then they don't? They go to this kind of, like, this is the most beautiful place they've ever been. They're living, and this is fantastic. This is the best I've ever had in life. Well, why did they go home? Why did they go back? Why don't they just stay there? They're convinced that for some reason they can't live like that. And it's this momentum from our past that makes us think that way. We've got to free ourselves from that. Free ourselves from the thought that we even are this body and the things that we do. God is doing all this through us. And the more we practice that, and we develop the skills of self-realization, we will perceive more and more of that inner reality. So you don't need to wait to go to the astral world to be aware of your intuitive connection to life. Open your heart. Perceive on ever deeper levels God's view of your current circumstances. Focus at the spiritual eye. Yoganandaji said, live at the spiritual eye. In the astral realm, it's the one eye, the spiritual eye. And the other eyes are half closed. Because you're not using your eyes so much as intuitive eye. It's the intuitive eye. You perceive it. You don't look at it. You perceive it. You're one with it. You enter into it. But it's the direction of will, life force directed through your consciousness, that will bring us back to this expanded state of potential. So take very seriously the things that we do. Recognize that basically what these things do is, these techniques, is they free us from all the things that are keeping us from perceiving our natural state of oneness with Spirit. And this understanding about the creation, the way the creation is made, Sri Yukteswar proved through his manifestation of a physical form after passing that he had the power to perceive these truths. But we don't have to take his word for it. What we want to do is experience it for ourselves. And the way to do that is to seek God. Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. If you love jelly donuts, you really go out of your way. You would go out of your way to go to your favorite place to get the very best donuts. You probably do this for gulab jamun or some other rasagullas. You probably have a favorite place where you get samosas. Someplace you know that that's the right place to go. In here, inside, in the Guru's presence, this is the right place to go for freedom in infinite bliss. Namaste.